pit stop is DC. Talk to us about your engagements here, sir.
Ma'am, I'm here to continue the bilateral discussions with the Secretary for Energy, Jennifer Granholm. We have a US-India strategic energy cooperation partnership. We have annual meetings in that. Under that program, there are several subgroups. These subgroups relate to power and energy efficiency. They relate to renewable energy. They relate to responsible oil and gas, and so on. Now, in these groups, the concerned departments of the government of India, they meet their counterparts in the US government, and they put together the work done. And I must share with you that the amount of work done has been considerable. I mean, when we started this strategic energy cooperation partnership, one wondered whether energy was a plank on which we could cooperate. But our cooperation in traditional energy had went up a couple of years ago to $20 billion of fossil traditional energy. But today, more than that, we are cooperating in the context of the Global Biofuels Alliance on biofuels. We are cooperating for the development of green hydrogen. Now, at a point like this, when there is clearly an energy transition taking place, there's no doubt about that. We have to survive the present. We have to, because the world will be dependent on fossil fuels for quite some time. But we must make that transition to cleaner, sustainable fuels. And India has a very good story to tell on that. When the Honorable Prime Minister assumed responsibility in May 2014, we were only blending 1.5% of our total fuel with biofuels. The Prime Minister set a target for 10% blending by November 2022. We were able to do that 5 months in advance. Then we had a target of 20% blending for 2030. We're going to do it by 2025 October. That is the ethanol blending year. Today, we are already, last month, I think we blended 15.9%. And we are increasing the number of feeds. United States, Brazil, India, and indeed overall 26 countries are members of the Global Biofuels Alliance. We were very happy that recently there was a conference on green hydrogen in Delhi, and the US was a partner country. Now, you might wonder, is all this current or is some of this in the future? But if you look at the speed with which they have worked on all these subgroups, it is now bringing that futuristic work right into the present. Different parts of the government of India, the oil companies, the railways, they're setting net zero standards. And I think I can share with you, not just because I'm sitting in DC, but we draw great strength from our cooperation with the United States on this cooperation on sustainable energy and looking at the technologies which will go into it, how Indian companies can contribute, where they can sign win-win MOUs. And I'm going to be going to Houston after this for Gas Tech. A number of MOUs that are going to be signed there between our economic entities. By the way, we also, in order to enhance our exploration and production ENP sector, the Honorable Prime Minister decided that out of our 3.5 million square kilometers of sedimentary basin, 1 million, which was a no-go area, has been made completely free. We are inviting collaboration with other global entities to come and prospect there. Our companies are entering into partnership, and apart from cleaning up these and clearing these no-go areas, we also have a global data repository in the University of Houston, which is enabling the acceleration. And I'm very confident that the 9th and 10th round will see a sudden acceleration of the number of wells that are dug. The amount of gas production is already going up. ONGC has made some very impressive finds, but the others are also in there. And I think this collaboration with the US government is a very strong framework provider. And also, I think in the US government side, we applaud their movement in the direction of sustainable energy, and we would want to continue to partner them.
You talked about gas tech and the MOUs that could be signed there. Could you underscore some of these? Could you elaborate a bit more about what's the nature?
Look, these are essentially industry to industry arrangements. Now, when technology providers and our companies sign these, they are committing themselves to further E&P, and most of these are beginning to show results. There are people who would like to supply natural gas to India. There's a difference between cylinder gas, which is made out of crude oil, which is refined, and natural gas. Global natural gas supply is increasing. Indian production is going up about 18% per year. But technology and investment are the two key ingredients which are required in order to give a further boost to the sector. We have been saying for a while, and I'm somewhat diffident sometimes to use this statistics, we want to bring the share of gas in our energy mix from 6% to 15%, which will require a lot of technological tie-ups, a lot of investment, and that investment will enable it. But when you are making efforts which are bringing results, those results in turn act as a force multiplier and further incentive to get others to come and collaborate.
All right. Apart from the officials, the government officials, your conversations are also revolve around, private players and private giants here in the US. Give us a sense of what these engagements look like and what these conversations are going to be.
Look, I'm encouraged by these engagements. If you look at the world today, I'm not trying to, say something is good as something is not good. We are a country which has a long diplomatic history, etc. But look at the world as it is today. There are parts of the industrialized West, so-called, where the economies are either in a state of slowdown, or if not a slowdown, I would say, if not in recession, they are flirting with recession. There are parts of East Asia which are worrisome. There is one economy which is a very large economy. It's a $19 trillion economy which has issues. The consumption of energy and is not increasing there. There are other sectors which are somewhat problematic. If you look at Japan, again there are issues. There's been a long period of slow growth and some more worrying tendencies. The Indian economy, on the other hand, in the last 10 years has come from the 11th or 10th position to being the 5th largest economy. And, I'm not a person who goes only by statistics, but if you look at what the world IMF is saying, the fund, International Monetary Fund, is saying that by 2027, India should be the 3rd largest economy. There are others who say that may not be 2027, slightly later. But the trajectory is very clear. If you're going at 7% plus on a $4 trillion base, you're going to grow. But I come now to the crux of it. Energy is the fundamental driver of economic growth. And if global energy demand is growing by 1%, the Indian energy demand is growing at 3 times that pace. In fact, there are professional associations, bodies. I think the International Energy Agency, which is Paris-based, has said that in the next 2 decades, 25% of the increase in global energy demand will come from India. Now, India has one of 2 possibilities. We have to raise our own E&P, but in spite of the efforts we are making now, and some of the neglect in the past has been of a criminal nature, we just let our eyes off it. But the efforts we are making now will also take a little time in terms of gestation to yield results. And I think we are getting there. And today, therefore, in spite of the fact that for gas we are almost 50% dependent on imports, for crude oil it's much higher. But please also bear in mind that we have a daily consumption of 5.4 million barrels of crude a day. When I've mentioned these figures to my friends outside India, that 7 million people go to the petrol pump every day or to the retail points to fill up. 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers. So the energy demand is going up. Now, what will happen in this? Delhi Metro, which is an urban transport provider, on August 20th had a daily ridership of 7.7 million. I'm just giving you some statistics to show how much of energy we need. And we are being able to make that transition to green energy. In spite of some dependence, which will continue for a while, the way I look at it, India today, for energy issues, is a live happening place. That explains whatever outreach we do in Gastech or elsewhere, the roadshows we have, our individual companies have, it is because they see a win-win situation in terms of also coming to India for economic reasons. And I think that combination put together is what is producing the results that we are seeking in India and we are being able to demonstrate.
Right. Now, you clearly sketched out India's energy needs. Are you under any pressure from the US to stop engagement with Russia with regards to India's imports? Or is it safe to say that the West has really made peace with, India's dependency or India's energy diplomacy with Russia?
I've had the privilege of being associated with this ministry now for 3 years. I am not aware of any point in my 3 years here where anyone has even made that suggestion. Let me put the arithmetic to you in a very simple way. Russia, before the events of February 2022, produced 13 million barrels of crude in a day. Just imagine a situation, forget about who buys it and who sells it. If that 13 million barrels had gone out of the equation of 102 million barrels which was being produced, that 13 million barrels would have had to be accessed from somewhere else, in which case the prices would have shot up to $120, $130 a barrel per day. In fact, today also, Europe buys more oil and more energy from Russia than we do in India. Also, we have a situation where I think it's in everybody's interest that at least the stability and the predictability of the scenario helps the market. So the answer is no. At no stage has anybody said it, but people continue to buy it themselves. For instance, gas which goes in a crude and energy which goes in a pipeline from Russia to Hungary was exempt from the price cut. What goes in a pipeline from Russia to Japan was exempt. What the suggestion that was made was that there should be a price cap on which purchases should be made from the Russian Federation. That price cap is there, but by the way, oil prices, some like me will applaud that, have actually come down. My latest look at oil prices was about $72 a barrel. A few days ago, I was quite surprised. It had even crossed the 70 and was below the $70 mark.
Right. Now, we recently saw Prime Minister Modi in Ukraine, and then we saw NSA Ajit Doval in Russia. How does the West, or particularly the US, see India's role in the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
I would like to think that all peace-loving countries would finally rally round to the Prime Minister's call that this is a time for diplomacy. This is a time for peace, not for time for war. Wars cannot be continued on an indefinite basis. I'm not going into the causation factor, who's right or who's wrong. You could argue that, there was a Minsk agreement that was not followed or something else happened. Today, the devastation that wars cause anywhere in the world, whether it's conflicts in nearer home in the Middle East or elsewhere, they have to be brought to the drawing board, to the negotiating table. So I think the point the Prime Minister of India has made consistently, he said that in a speech to the GA some years ago, it's a point he has reiterated, it's a point he has had a discussion, and I'm very happy to find that all these signals I've seen have been that a country like India can help. It's come from both the sides, and that is what I think deserves to be. I won't go into the individual thing. If the foreign minister, external affairs minister comes here, I want you to be able to talk to him in greater detail. But not just in energy, for everything else. Today, we need to be able to move forward on the processes of peace. And India, both through its G20 presidency, as indeed through other statements that the Prime Minister has made, our other senior government functionaries have made, has been pushing in the direction of taking conflict zones into a situation of cessation of hostilities and then finding a resolution to those conflicts.
All right. Moving on from the Prime Minister to the leader of opposition, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, who was here in the United States just a week before your visit. While talking about the RSS ideology, Mr. Gandhi quoted an example of a Sikh being unable to wear a turban or a kara in India. How do you react to this?
I've already reacted, but I find it astounding that you're going around looking for a Sikh, happen to find somebody in the front row, who, by the way, I think also made a statement later, and you turn around and say, The issue is whether he can wear a turban. I mean, I have worn a turban 62 years of my life. I worn a kada even longer. I think most children in our families, when they're born, the first occasion, they put a kada around. But I think the more disturbing trend is, to say that this is a statement which was made out of ignorance, or it's in that genre of Pappu, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I think that's wrong. I think there is a more systematic, sinister, and I'm using this word carefully, attempt to foment a divisive narrative to create a sense of insecurity and freedom. Now, my brothers and sisters who came to the United States to work here many years ago, some of them have active contacts with with their home country. Some of them just go through social media or whatever they read. Now, if you foment a narrative like this, that Sikhs are finding it difficult or insecure to wear turban, some of them may actually believe it, which is not the case. If there has been any time in the history of our post-independence existence when there was an existential threat to the Sikhs, or they felt one, I've experienced it myself. It was during the 1984, I don't use the word riots because it was a one-sided pogrom against innocent people, 3,000 of whom were killed in cold blood in India. And if you look at what happened before that, in the 80s, when in the run-up to the Asian Games, Sikhs used to be taken out of buses, etc., and said, because you're a turban Sikh, you go on the side. Now, some of the commentators, some educated people, I've written an article on it, I have actively contradicted the honorable leader of opposition statement. Some of them said, because he's a government minister. No, forget it, I'm proud to be a government minister. Before that, I was a civil servant. I was a diplomat for 39 years. But I was a diplomat not because any government appointed me. I appeared in a UPSC examination and qualified, and under different governments. Now, I think it's a matter of great pride for somebody like me to say that the Sikhs have never had it so good. All the grievances which were there have actually been addressed by the Honorable Prime Minister, whether it is removing names of Sikhs from the blacklist, whether it is addressing the issue of the Kartarpur Sahib corridor, or, celebrating the Sahibzada's contribution in terms of Veerbal Divas, etc. All that is there. What I'm surprised about is that there seems to be a pattern in this. And last year, this honorable leader of opposition came here and he said Sikhs were a second-class citizens. I came across that statement. Then now, recently, apparently in different places here, whilst he's attacking an ideology, he's trying to, build a narrative by turning around and saying, well, you cannot practice your religion. Has anybody in India told him that? Now the people who are supporting up, no, there are some grievances. Yeah, every community has grievances. Let me assure you, the majority community also has grievances that they are made to sometimes feel like a minority community in their own country. There are other minority communities. But the beauty of a democracy, and by the way, we have 960 million registered voters and something like 680 million actually turned out to vote. That is a celebration of democracy. There are differences of opinion in the United States. But if somebody who should know better, I choose my word scale, who should know better, comes out here and at a time when there's an election going on, makes it a point to go to place to spread insecurity. वो हमारे यहाँ कहते हैं तो झूठ और भ्रम फैला रहे हैं. और इनको ये पता होना चाहिए कि हमारे जो कम्युनिटी है, सिखों की कम्युनिटी, हिंदुस्तान में तो कभी उन्होंने बात नहीं की. आप बड़े अच्छा फिर कहते हैं कि वो किसी का नाम लेते. अरे देखिए, आप जब सत्ता में थे, आप ये देखिए ये जो मॉन्स्टर्स प्रोड्यूस किए, कौन सी सरकार ने प्रोड्यूस किए हैं. मैं उसमें ज्यादा डिटेल में नहीं जाना चाहता हूं. तो इनको तो अपने अंदर जहां they need to do some solid introspection in order to find out why we had, क्यों ये हुआ और किसने ये करवाया. और ये जो झूठ और भ्रम, this is a narrative anchored in total lies. And therefore, I'm, not surprised that he's going around doing it. But it is, I think, ये जो मोहम्मद अली जिन्ना वाली बात थी पुराने जमाने में जो किया था कि या तो मुझे चाहिए जो मैं चाहता हूं, ठीक है, नहीं तो मैं इसको नष्ट करके रहूंगा सब कुछ। ये तो उस किस्म की माइंडसेट है। नहीं तो आप किसी रीजनेबल आप और हम बैठ सकते हैं, हमारी विचारधारा में कुछ अंतर हो सकता है, बट द होल ब्यूटी ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी इज सिट एंड एड्रेस दीज इशूज। बट ये तो एक लगे हुए हैं, एक किसके खिलाफ है ये, वो उनको देखना चाहिए कि जो आरएसएस है उनकी देश के लिए क्या कंट्रीब्यूशन रही है। जब भी नेशन फर्स्ट, और जो मोदी जी की सरकार है, दैट हैज दिस वन डिस्टिंग्विशिंग फीचर इन द आइडियोलॉजी, नेशन फर्स्ट। पर ये तो उल्टे तरफ चल रहे हैं, ये तो झूठा ब्रह्म। दिस इज लाइक यू नो द जिन्ना, आई मीन यू वांट टू लीड इट टू a kind of breakup of situation। पर मैं उनको ये याद कराना चाहता हूं, हमारी बहुत पुरानी 5000 साल से अधिक पुरानी संस्कृति और सभ्यता है। इट्स एन ओल्ड सिविलाइजेशन। People like this will not be able to break it, and we are a proud nation, and Sikhs are very happy to be and are flourishing in this nation. I'm not only just because I'm a minister, but I see so many other people जो they've risen to the apex in the judiciary, Supreme Court में पहुंचे हैं। वो आप बिजनेस कम्युनिटी देखिए, आप आर्म फोर्सेस में हमारी जनसंख्या जो है 140 करोड़ में, उसमें हमारी सिखों की 2% से कम है, और उनकी कंट्रीब्यूशन आर्म फोर्सेस में 20% से ज्यादा है। हमारे सिख भाई अन्नदाता भी है। तो ये राहुल गांधी जी का ये जो नैरेटिव देश के बाहर उनको फैलाने की कोशिश करते हैं, इट इज ऑलरेडी रिसीव्ड सिवियर कमेंट्स ऑन इट, पर आने वाले समय में भी ये कामयाब नहीं होगा।
Let's just take you back a few decades. When Rajiv Gandhi was here in Washington, D.C. at the National Press Club, he was heckled by a few Khalistanis.
And he said, your capital is in Lahore.
That's exactly.
उसके बाद राजीव गांधी जी की पूर्व प्रधानमंत्री के समय अब एक और देश है जो यहाँ से जरा ज्यादा दूर नहीं है, कुछ वो लोग कोशिश कर रहे हैं उसका कैपिटल वहां बनाने में। तो एक अगर ये जो इमेजिनरी स्थान है उसके 2 कैपिटल हो सकते हैं, एक लाहौर में और एक यहाँ पे नजदीक। पर वो जहां पे वो लोग दुखी आ गए, इनको ये समझ नहीं आ रहा कि जो लोग आपको इसमें इनकरेज करते हैं उनका गेम प्लान कुछ और है। आपका इंटरेस्ट इज नॉट व्हाट दे हैव एट हार्ट, दे आर वांटिंग टू डू समथिंग कंप्लीटली डिफरेंट, दे आर ट्राइंग टू क्रिएट अ प्रॉब्लम इन, सो यू आर बीइंग यूज्ड एज अ पॉन इन द हैंड्स ऑफ द आईएसआई एंड अदर फोर्सेस। तो अगर उनको ये समझ आ जाए तो मैं समझता हूं हमारा पॉलिटिकल डिस्कोर्स होगा, नहीं तो द पीपल ऑफ इंडिया विल रिजेक्ट देम।
All right. And finally, India's opposition leader, Arvind Kejriwal, will resign as Delhi's chief minister. Your reaction to that?
देखिए मैडम, मुझे पता नहीं कितने दिन वो लॉकअप रहे हैं, मुझे लगता है 145 दिन के करीब होंगे लॉकअप में। सवाल ये उठता है कि आप 145 दिन पहले क्यों नहीं रिजाइन किए, या उस 145 दिनों के दौरान क्यों नहीं रिजाइन किए। और आपको रिजाइन करना है तो बड़ी खुशी से करिए। आपको ये कहना, टू डोंट मेक अ टॉकिंग पॉइंट आउट ऑफ इट और क्लेम कि आप कुछ खास कर रहे हैं। जो बेल की कंडीशंस ऑनररी एपेक्स कोर्ट सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने दिए हैं वो पढ़ने लायक है। वो कह रहे हैं आप अपने दफ्तर नहीं जा सकते, आप कोई फाइल नहीं साइन कर रहे थे, विच मीन्स ही हैज अ केस टू आंसर। देयर इज अ वेरी सीरियस करप्शन केस अगेंस्ट हिम। वो अगर रिजाइन करना चाहें तो दैट्स हिज कॉल, बट आई थिंक दैट केस ही स्टिल हैज टू आंसर। और मुझे तो लगता है आने वाले समय में जिस तरीके से वो एक उनकी शुरुआत कहां से हुई थी, अन्ना हजारे जी का एक आंदोलन था करप्शन के खिलाफ। आप उस आंदोलन में बैठे थे और आपने कहा था आप भ्रष्टाचार के खिलाफ लड़ाई लड़ना चाहते हैं, पर भ्रष्टाचार कौन करता था उस समय? किसकी सरकार थी? कांग्रेस की सरकार थी। अभी उसी रामलीला ग्राउंड में जहां पे अन्ना जी के साथ ये आंदोलन पे बैठे थे, वहीं आके ये कांग्रेसियों के साथ गले मिल गए। दूसरी बात इनकी कांग्रेस की और आम आदमी पार्टी की हरियाणा में वो जो है अलायंस नहीं हुई, बट दूसरी बात है। सो ये एक एंटी करप्शन क्रूसेडर से शुरू करके आप एक करप्ट आउटफिट, जो आप सुप्रीम कोर्ट की बेल कंडीशन भी पड़ी है, सो ही हैज अ बिग केस टू आंसर फॉर। और आने वाला समय बताएगा कि एक कैसे इसको आगे ले जाते हैं।
And also the going forward, the government's 100-day plan. Could you further elaborate on that?
देखिए सबसे बड़ी जो मैं समझता हूं, मैं जब G7 की समिट मीटिंग हो रही थी तो मैं देख रहा था कि जहां पे जब सारे लीडर्स गैदर थे, वो उनमें से कितने सेकंड टाइम इलेक्ट हो सके। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी पहली बारी भी 2014 में 37 साल के अनुभव के बाद उन्होंने एब्सोल्यूट मेजॉरिटी अपनी आए 272 से ऊपर थे। 2019 में 303 आए। अभी भी अगर आप देखें तो प्री पोल अलायंस के साथ, चुनाव के पहले जो अलायंसेस, इनके हमारी मेजॉरिटी से ऊपर है। 10 साल में जो काम हुआ, इतनी ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन भारत के इतिहास में 1947 के बाद कभी हुई ही नहीं। ठीक है, अब मैं आपको आंकड़े दे सकता हूं। 7 साल ये मेरा सौभाग्य था, मैं हाउसिंग और अर्बन मंत्रालय के साथ, अफेयर्स मंत्रालय के साथ जुड़ा हुआ था। 2004 से लेके 2014 तक आपकी हमारे यहां अर्बन स्पेंड का जो फिगर है 1,57,000 करोड़ था, 1,57,000 करोड़। अभी वो 11 गुना या 11 गुना से ज्यादा बढ़ गया। तो ये अगले 10 साल, 2014 से 2024 तक प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना में जो शहरी और ग्रामीण क्षेत्र में मिला के हमने 3 करोड़ से अधिक घर, 4 करोड़ से अधिक आवास बनाए हैं। अभी माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने 3 करोड़ और कर दिए। अभी देखिए 10 साल में 74 हवाई अड्डों की जगह 150 हो गए हवाई अड्डे। हमारे पेट्रोलियम और नेचुरल गैस मंत्रालय में देखिए, ओपाल एक हमारी एंटिटी है जो गुजरात में, उसमें हमने पहले 100 दिन में यह निर्णय किया है 18,500 करोड़ की इक्विटी इन्फ्यूजन के साथ, और इसको आगे ले जाएंगे। हमारी उज्ज्वला योजना के तहत एक परिवार में एक दिन का जो कुकिंग पे खर्चा है वो कोई 5-6 रुपए है। अभी हमने ये भी तय, अभी देखा हमने पहले 100 दिन पे जो सिलेंडर यूटिलाइजेशन है वो 4 सिलेंडर तक पहुंच गई। चौंसी एरिया में आप देखिए वे काम बढ़ता जा रहा है। अभी जैसे प्रधानमंत्री जी की जो एडवांस बायोफ्यूल्स एक हमारी योजना है, ऊर्जा जीवन, उसमें आप देखिए 2G और 2G और 3G एथेनॉल के भी हम काम कर रहे हैं। इसको और हम बढ़ा रहे हैं, उसको आगे ले जा रहे हैं। हमारे बायोगैस पे, बायोफ्यूल्स पे, सब में पिछले 100 दिन में जो है हम इंडिविजुअली इसको करेंगे। मैं आपको जो मैंने थोड़े से आंकड़े बताए हैं पेट्रोलियम मंत्रालय में, तो मैं देख रहा हूं इसकी जो हमारी बाकी जो टारगेट्स हैं सारी अपवर्ड रिवाइज हो रहे हैं। और अभी आने वाले समय में आज से हम लोग अपनी इंडिविजुअल जो हमने काम किया है हर एक चीज में, जो उज्ज्वला योजना जो है फॉर इंस्टेंस ये 2016 में शुरू की थी, हमारी ये टोटल 10 करोड़ 33 लाख पे पहुंच गई है। और आप किसी के एक हमारे लीडर ऑफ अपोजिशन की बात कर रहे थे, जब ये सत्ता में थे टोटल नंबर ऑफ गैस सिलेंडर्स सिर्फ 14 करोड़ थे, ये भी सारे अर्बन एरियाज में थे। अभी हमारे गैस सिलेंडर जो हैं ज्यादातर रूरल एरिया में, उज्ज्वला के खासकर 70-80% नए कनेक्शन सारे रूरल एरियाज में, और अब हम पहुंच गए 10 करोड़ 33 लाख से अधिक उज्ज्वला कनेक्शन। तो ऐसा है कि 10 साल में जो काम हुआ और पहले 100 दिन में जो काम हुआ वो 10 साल के काम को आगे बढ़ा रहा है। और आने वाले समय में हम सिर्फ 3rd लार्जेस्ट इकोनॉमी नहीं है, आगे चलते चलते 2029 तक हमारा जो 2047 में एक विकास देश की माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का सपना है और उन्होंने का प्रोग्राम है, उसकी तरफ और तेजी से बढ़ रहे हैं।